Giselle Pellico's lawyer speaking to the BBC. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
You're watching BBC News. I'm Lyse Doucet. We're live this hour from Damascus. The top headlines this hour. Israel says it has destroyed Syria's naval installations as it continues its attacks on what it says are military targets across Syria for a third day. Turkey's President Erdogan has welcomed the capture of 2 Syrian towns in the north, which had been under Kurdish control. In Damascus, the rebels who toppled President Assad's regime are offering rewards for information about senior security officers involved in alleged war crimes. And here in the Syrian capital, life is slowly starting to return to normal. You can perhaps hear the traffic in the streets. Civil servants were ordered to return to work today, and also some shops have reopened. We'll all have the latest in this hour.
Lyse Doucet there in Damascus. I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy here in London. Our other top stories. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu testifies for the first time in his long-running corruption trial. President Macron calls cross-party talks in an attempt to form a new government in France following an historic no-confidence vote last week. And Google says its new quantum chip takes 5 minutes to solve a problem that would currently take the world's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion years to complete.
Welcome to the Syrian capital, Damascus. You join us as this city slowly resumes its normal rhythms after the sudden reversal on Sunday, which toppled President Assad's regime, the end of 50 years of rule by the Assad family. Today, the new leaders, dominated by the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Thomas Pero, thank you very much for outlining so clearly what the kind of challenges which lie ahead for Syria's new leadership. And today is only the second full day that the new leadership, as we've just heard, dominated very much by the main Islamist groups, a proscribed terrorist organization headed by their military commander, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, who's now using Ahmed al-Shara, his real name now, not his nom de guerre, but he is slowly putting in place his new administration as Syrians come to terms with this massive upheaval in their own lives and looking to their new leaders for everything from keeping the lights on, keeping the shops open, people being able to go to work, but also keeping people's hope alive that this new chapter in Syrian lives can move the country forward and give it the kind of peace, security and stability that they have yearned for so many years. We're going to keep an eye on all the developments from here and across Syria, but keep watching BBC News.
You're watching BBC News. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has begun testifying in his trial on charges of fraud, breach of trust and bribery. He's the first serving leader in Israel to take to the witness stand as a criminal defendant. Mr Netanyahu has denied the allegations. Our Middle East correspondent Yulan Nell is in court. Pierre-Antoine Denis, thank you so much. We will keep you across those talks in France, and we'll be back with Lyse, of course, too, in Damascus in the next 30 minutes. Do stay with us here on BBC News. Much more, of course, on the website if you want to stay right up to date. This is BBC News, the headlines. Israel says it's destroyed Syria's naval fleet as it continues its attacks on Syrian military installations for a third day. In Damascus, the rebels who toppled the Assad regime are offering rewards for information about senior security officers involved in alleged war crimes. A man is charged with murder over last week's fatal shooting of a healthcare boss in New York. And as Google unveils a mind-bogglingly powerful new chip, we'll be joined by a scientist to help guide us through the new frontier of quantum computing. Hello, I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy. Before all that, let's get all the latest on the sport. Here's Shabnam Mahmood. Hi there.
Hello from the BBC Sports Centre. Tottenham defender Christian Romero has criticised the club's board for a lack of investment following their disappointing 4-3 defeat at home to Chelsea. And that's all your sport for now. Back to you, Geeta.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's bring you more now on our top story. Israel says it has destroyed Syria's naval fleet. The defence minister warned Islamist rebels who overthrew Bashar al-Assad that his country would never allow terrorists to threaten Israel. Syria's neighbours and the UN have called for the Israeli attacks to stop. BBC Verify's Merlin Thomas has been analysing footage on social media to find out more. OK, Imad Al-Anab, thank you very much indeed for being with us there, and I'm sure we will be in touch with you again as this huge story develops. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Now to the United States, where a 26-year-old man has been charged with the murder of a health insurance executive who was shot dead in a street in New York last week. Luigi Mangione was detained in Pennsylvania after being recognised in a McDonald's. He has since appeared in court. Let's get the latest from our correspondent Neda Tawfik in New York. Neda, just tell us more about what we know about Luigi Mangione and the circumstances surrounding his arrest. Okay.
There's kind of risks, but there's a solution there.
That is good to know. It's absolutely fascinating. I wish we had longer, but Professor Alan Woodward, thank you so much for explaining that so clearly. Great to talk to you. This is BBC News.
You're watching BBC News. I'm Lyse Doucet. We're live in Damascus. Our top headlines this hour. Israel says it's destroyed Syria's naval fleet as it continues its attacks on what it calls military installations for a third day. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan welcomes the capture of 2 Syrian towns in the north of the country which had been under Syrian Kurdish control. In Damascus, the rebels who toppled President Assad's regime are offering rewards for information about senior security officers wanted in alleged war crimes. And here in the Syrian capital, life is slowly beginning to normal. Traffic is flowing on the street, even though the curfew is now in force. Civil servants were asked to return to work today, and some shops have been opening. We'll have the latest for you this hour.
I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy. Our other top stories this hour. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu testifies for the first time in his long-running corruption trial. President Macron calls cross-party talks in an attempt to form a new government in France following an historic no-confidence vote last week.
Welcome to the Syrian capital, Damascus, as the second full day under Syria's new rebel leadership is coming to a close. A nighttime curfew is now in force, although you may also hear that some of the traffic is still flowing. That's new as well, because the streets had been quiet on Sunday and Monday after the rebels suddenly seized control. But a time it's seen as an opportunity for Syrians to finally get back the Syria they've long wanted to build.
Lyse Doucet in Damascus, many thanks. We'll be back with you, of course, very soon. Let's go to the US, because a fast-moving wildfire fanned by strong winds has been spreading in Malibu in California, an area that is home to some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Evacuations have been taking place, with the fire consuming more than 1,800 acres in just a few hours. Large parts of Southern California are currently under a red flag warning, with winds and low humidity elevating the fire risk. Joining me now on the line is Michael Friel, Director of Communications at Pepperdine University in Malibu, where classes have been suspended because of the wildfires. Just tell us what's happening where you are. How close are the fires to the university? Michael Friel, thank you so much for being with us from Malibu at Pepperdine University. Very good to speak to you. This is BBC News.
Spiralling debts and a worsening pollution crisis at Thames Water. It supplies a quarter of the UK population, so will the government be forced to wade in? Succession setback. Rupert Murdoch loses a legal bid to control his media empire and hand control to his eldest son, but his lawyers vow to continue the fight. An expensive espresso, a warning for coffee lovers as prices hit record highs. And big tech's nuclear option, data centres will use as much electricity as Japan by 2026. So, could mini reactors be the answer to AI's demand for power? Well, we'll have that interview for you just a little later, but we're going to start with the deepening crisis at the UK's biggest water firm, Thames Water. It supplies a quarter of this country's population, but has racked up massive debts and is under growing pressure over sewage spills into rivers and seas. Today, Thames revealed that the number of what it calls pollution incidents has soared by 40% in the first half of the year. And that is your business today. See you soon.
Hello, I'm Geeta Guru-Murthy. This is BBC News. Let's take you back now to our top story today. Israel says it has destroyed Syria's naval fleet. The defence minister warned Islamist rebels who overthrew Bashar al-Assad that his country would never allow terrorists to threaten Israel. Syria's neighbours and the UN have called for the Israeli attacks to stop. BBC Verify's Melin Thomas has been analysing footage on social media to find out more. One of the fire chiefs there in California, a state that is prone to wildfires, but the pictures coming to us still very dramatic there. You are watching BBC News. Now, shares in big tech have soared this year, linked to optimism over artificial intelligence. But AI is hungry for energy, and data centres are projected to burn through as much electricity as the entire country of Japan by 2026. Well, to meet this demand, Amazon recently announced a $500 million investment with a nuclear partner to build advanced modular reactors in Washington state. That's brilliant. Not sure about the team, but it is brilliant. I'm a Liverpool fan. Let's get the weather now. Here's Helen Willits.
You're watching BBC News. I'm Lyse Doucet, live from Damascus. Our main headlines this hour. Israel says it's destroyed the Syrian Navy as it continues its attacks on what it calls military installations for a third day. President Erdogan of Turkey welcomes the capture of 2 Syrian towns in the north, which had been under the control of Syrian Kurdish forces. In Damascus, the rebels who toppled President Assad's regime on Sunday now say they're offering rewards for information about senior security officers involved in alleged war crimes. Here in the Syrian capital today, signs of a city returning to normal with traffic flowing and people returning to work. The new interim government has announced a caretaker prime minister. We'll have the latest this hour.
I'm Geeta, Guru-Murthy. Our other top stories. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu testifies for the first time in his long-running corruption trial. President Macron calls cross-party talks in an attempt to form a new government in France following an historic no-confidence vote last week. And thousands are evacuated as a fast-moving wildfire fanned by strong winds spreads in Malibu, California.
You join us in Damascus, the Syrian capital, as the city is now under curfew. And the end of the second day of the rebel control of Syria after they toppled President Assad comes to a close. There are all the signs that this is a city, a capital, slowly returning to normal. We can see from here the traffic still going through the streets. The traffic was very heavy during the day here, a sign that people feel confident enough to come out. Chris Doyle from the Centre for Arab and British Council for Arab and British Understanding, Kabul. Thank you very much for joining us with your assessment of what is emerging now here in Damascus, a new order emerging, very much dominated by Islamists working with members of the old government. It's early days and there's still a cautious welcome, but many questions too. That's it from Damascus for now.
This is BBC News. A fast-moving wildfire fanned by strong winds has been spreading in Malibu in California, an area that is home to some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Evacuations have been taking place, with the fire consuming more than 1,800 acres in just a few hours. Large parts of Southern California are currently under a red flag warning. These are the live images that have been coming into us, as you can see, and there are winds, low humidity too, which are elevating the fire risk. Pierre, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Do stay with us here on BBC News. We are going to be back in a few minutes with a full update, and we'll keep you across those pictures from California too, as those wildfires still continue in Malibu and the evacuation order continues. This is BBC News. This is BBC News, the headlines. Israel says it has destroyed Syria's naval fleet as it continues its attacks on Syrian military installations for a third day. In Damascus, the rebels who toppled the Assad regime are offering rewards for information about senior security officers involved in alleged war crimes. A man is charged with murder over last week's fatal shooting of a healthcare boss in New York. An economic think tank warns that council deficits in England could spiral to what they say are absurd levels without radical reform of funding for special educational needs. I'm Geeta, Guru-Murthy. Do stay with us. Let's get all the sport first of all. Here's Jane. Hi there.
Hello there, Geeta. Tottenham defender Christian Romero has criticised the club's board for a lack of investment following their disappointing 4-3 defeat at home to Chelsea. More details on all of those stories on the BBC Sport website, but that's it for now, Geeta.
Jane, thanks so much. Just let me take you back to Malibu and California and these incredibly dramatic pictures that we are getting, very alarming pictures of a wildfire that has spread there. There's a big evacuation order and these flames obviously fanned by the wind. They're threatening many people, homes and businesses.
Yes, boys, all of me.
What a lucky chap. Too excited to stay and chat. Don't blame him. Stay with us here on BBC News. That's it from me. See you next time.
Hello there. The fog has been reluctant to clear in some parts, notably